Pity I didn't have these pictures I could put onto the screen because I didn't like a picture. Anyway. This is, so I recorded some songs and trying to get a record deal, and then I couldn't get a record deal. This was 1972 or 1 or something. And so I took a job. Like many musicians, I've had lots of jobs, different jobs, driving taxis and painting people's walls and doing all that sort of stuff. And then one job I had was working in this theatre. I've had a couple of jobs working in theatre. And it was called the Rainbow Theatre in North London, and it was quite famous and in the 70s. And they had some fantastic, all the acts, everyone played there. You know, Bob Marley played there, and all the big rock and roll acts. Okay. And so I worked there, working the lights and stuff. So this is a little excerpt from being at this, doing this job. Word gets around when the circus comes to town. Okay. The Christmas show at the Rainbow was Chipperfield Circus. I was manning the spots for that, and so came to know the routines and patter off by heart, from the Spanish knife-throwing hombre who used his wife for target practice, to the high-wire act, from the jugglers and clowns to the showgirls, and of course everyone doubled up in the acts. Animals still featured in those days, and as well as the monkeys and horses, these included elephants and lions. The elephants deposited the largest amount of dung on the stage, but by far the smelliest poo was the lions. There was even a tiger, and afterwards I wrote a song called The Monkey and the Tiger, which, although I've never recorded it, remains fairly relevant. It's a conversation between two animals about whether they should be in the circus. And I guess I may have got an idea from Rudyard Kipling, who wrote so beautifully from the perspective of animals. And here's a bit of the lyric. The monkey, he said to the tiger, soon all our jungle will be gone. How can I tell the white man this was once our ancestral home? Our days, they are as numbered as the autumn leaves on the tree. Now there don't seem to be no place where we can roam and be free. Chorus. So it's down on the sideshows of life. Believe me, you needn't think twice. Under those bright circus lights, down on the sideshows of life. One night, my friend, the socialite, Cara Denman, invited me to a smart, fancy-dressed Christmas party at Christie's auction house in Mayfair. So I asked Arthur the clown to make me up backstage, which he duly did. Then I jumped onto the tube, where everyone ignored me, and headed into town. I had a few tricks up my sleeve as benefits a clown, but realised once I arrived that most partygoers just liked the dressing up. There was no acting it up, which seemed a bit tame. Many of the toffs, the upper class people who went to this, was very upper class do, I noticed, had come as cardinals, you know, in the church. So I went up to one who turned out to be the Duke of Marlborough, a frightfully rich person, and I showed him my ring, which he briefly looked at before I squirted him with it. He was not amused. I think I was ejected after letting off a smoke bomb in the corridor. I was quite an anarchist, I think. And that's a little bit about that. I was going to, here we are, a little bit, yeah. Okay, and this is about being in Los Angeles. I spent a bit of time in Los Angeles, you know, trying to sort of get a music sort of deal, which never really happened. So I was living in Los Angeles, and I had no money, and you know, I was really pretty desperate. It's quite interesting writing, because when you write about times when you had it quite hard, it's sort of more interesting. It's kind of more interesting somehow. Okay, Ronnie Wood was a pal of Freddie Sessler's, which is where I was staying, and he called me one evening suggesting I come down to the studio where he was recording with Eric Clapton. I borrowed a car and drove out along winding Sunset Boulevard to where it meets the ocean. turned right past Malibu, and finally found a shack-like studio up above Zuma Beach. Shangri-La was a down-home, friendly joint and owned by the band, whose records we had listened to endlessly in London. Eric had his regular outfit of Jamie Oldacre on drums, Carl Radle on bass, George Terry on guitar. The session went on late, and I returned bleary-eyed around 5 a.m. The following afternoon, a repeat call came from Ronnie. "Are you coming again tonight to the studio?" he asked. "Oh, well, I wasn't thinking of it," I replied, to which, after a pause, he said, "Well, Eric would like you to." So I took a breath, wondering why old Slow Hand was requesting me. Do you know why Eric Clapton is called Slow Hand? You know, that's his nickname. His nickname used to be Slow Hand, because when he broke a string on stage, before we had roadies and stuff, he had to change his string. So whilst he was changing his string, the audience would all clap like this. He got the nickname Slow Hand. After a long drive, I found myself sitting in the control room alongside the engineer, listening to Eric and his band and watching him through the plate glass window. There was no producer as such, and during the chat after each take, I found myself pressing the talkback button and offering my humble opinion. Of course, they hadn't asked me, but what the hell? I reckon my ears were as good as anyone else's. And when you're not actually playing, you probably have a better perspective. A deafening silence ensued, and perhaps a sarcastic remark. This was, after all, the Monty Python Eric Idle period. And then things moved on. My role wasn't defined. I was unsure of myself, and if you don't actually have much to do in a studio, you're likely to get into trouble, which is what happened one time with the band's pianist, Richard Manuel. He gave me some Ritalin, it's a drug, which I've never come across before or since, and it made us both very hyperactive, at one point jumping onto a coffee table, which promptly collapsed under our weight. The din attracted others who came in to see what was going on and found us looking rather foolish, surrounded by bits of wood and table legs. I did like Richard. I was amazed too at his colleague Garth Hudson's organ playing. He's a multi-instrumentalist and a master musician. I returned on Eric's birthday to see a mass turnout of guitar players. Ronnie, Eric, George Terry, Robbie Robertson, along with the rest of the band, Levon Helm and Garth, plus Van Morrison and Bob Dylan. Bob brought along a song to record, which is what you do, I guess, and it started, "You speak to me in sign language while I'm eating a sandwich in a small cafe." I said hello to him as he slouched in a chair in a room on his own, and he gave me the limp handshake treatment. Afterwards, a jam began, and all the guitarists were too polite to take the lead until Jesse Ed Davis turned up and played every standard lick in the book. Then Van the Man did a neck-tingling version of Stormy Monday, I think the best thing I've ever heard him sing. Dylan had a crush on a well-proportioned lady with a broken arm, which was in a plaster cast, and he put up a tent in the garden so he could spend the night with her. A day or two later, I played a gentle game of tennis with her as there was a court, and couldn't help thinking of the Bonzo Dog band that went, "I want to get you in my tent, 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 tent."